Hi, good morning, everybody, and welcome back after a little bit of a break to another Jobtrain How talent session. It's really good to be back. It's been a little while. We've been busy on lots of projects and things, but I'm really delighted to bring our webinar sessions back to you this morning. And we're going to be running them pretty much every other week now for the rest of this year. We'll take a little bit of a break for the Jubilee bank holiday that we're all looking forward to, but then we're going to crack on. We've got some amazing guests coming up over the coming months. But for this morning, we're really pleased to invite and have on our very own Gary Towers. Now, just a quick sound check. Can everybody see me and hear me okay before I continue talking? If you could just pop something into the chat window, that would be amazing. And then we can continue. We should also be live on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on YouTube as well. So welcome to anybody joining via those channels. As we go through this morning's session, if you have any questions at all, then please do pop them in the Ask a Questions bit, which is just down here, and we'll be very happy to answer them all as we go along. This morning's session has been really popular, so I'm really pleased to see so many people. I think we've got something like 70 people joining us for this morning's session. So clearly there's a lot of you that have a real interest in how we can get to grips with, use and action the data that we have. It's been a bit of a journey that we've been on internally within Jobtrain, and just before I invite Gary on screen, it's probably worth sort of framing this conversation a little bit in terms of our own story. Now, Gary's got a wealth of experience within resourcing, within project management, even before joining us. And when he did come into the Jobtrain business, he very quickly became our guru, our go-to person for all things reporting and data, helping clients really surface all of their recruitment data, make sense out of it, and understand what stories it was telling us and what actions they might need to take, either operationally or even strategically as well. So it was a pretty natural progression then that we started to think as a business, well, how can we help all of the customers that we work with to make more use of their data and understand that element a lot more. We know that HR and TA are asked to wear a lot of different hats. We're supposed to be people, we've got to be recruitment marketeers, we've got to work successfully with hiring managers, we've got to think strategically in terms of the growth of our business and the contribution recruitment makes into that. And on top of it all, we've now got to be data scientists as well, and it's a big ask. So we set up the talent intelligence unit within Jobtrain to help our customers to get their heads around reporting and produce really meaningful reports. But also as a business, we literally process tens of millions of applications every single year. I think at any one time, we've got something like 70,000 live vacancies, or maybe more than that, across of our customer base. So we've got a lot of data that we can actually use to inform the market a little bit about what's going on around recruitment right across all the sectors we work in as well. And Gary will talk through some of our talent intelligence market reports a little bit. But without any further ado, let's get the expert on, and he can inform us all. And hopefully by the end of this session, we'll come out with a really good understanding of what is talent intelligence and how can we harness that and data to move our businesses forward, both strategically and operationally too. So just give me a second. I'm going to invite Gary on screen. There he is. Right, Gary, I'm just inviting you now. Gives me a chance for a quick sip of coffee. Gary, good morning.
Hi, Giles. Hi, everyone.
Gary, you're coming through loud and clear. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. You can see that I'm in the office. Gary's working from home. We operate the hybrid model. So here it is for everybody. And Gary, I've given you a little bit of introduction. I might have missed a few elements out just for everybody here this morning. Just give us a little bit of an introduction to you, and also perhaps a little about your journey through and into talent intelligence, because I know that you are now today very much plugged into the wider talent intelligence community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you did quite a lot of it for me, Giles. Thank you very much. It's coming up on 25 years in resourcing now. So So I've been in it a long time, and that's covered everything from low volume, high volume, niche, general. But I've always specialised in sort of the process, strategy, systems side of recruitment more than anything, and with a background in Six Sigma as well, trying to optimize processes has been a speciality, and that lends itself very well to talent intelligence, which we'll come on to as we talk more about what it is and what people need to get involved in if they're thinking of getting into talent intelligence. A way I would describe it in simplicity is try to always take an approach of Amazon. When you think about Amazon, the scale of which they operate, the huge scale, global systems, processes, they're so efficient. Everyone can just go on a phone, click a button, and have the package arrive, maybe even the same day in some cities. That's always been my approach to recruitment. How can we try and get every element of the process so refined that it becomes easy for the customer, that they can click one button and a whole domino effect takes place? But equally, that whilst automation can scare people and think you lose the customer element, when do you ever hear of a customer not satisfied by Amazon? People tend to be pleased because it's so simple. They get what they wanted and they get it in a good time frame at a good price. Surely it should be the same for recruitment as well. So that's the approach we try and take, try and mechanize everything and get it running perfectly.
Great, that's a really good introduction. Because when I first heard, I think I sat in on a session that was talking about talent intelligence for about 4 years ago, but it really seems that in the last 18 months or so, a great deal more focus has been placed on it. So help us to understand, or perhaps just give us a quick overview of what is TI, and is it really as revolutionary as a lot of people are saying?
Yeah. For some people, no, if this has been part of your normal working, as I've mentioned in my background, data has been an important part of that. But it is more than just data. I think it's the application. That's what's so important. It's how you blend different data and how you use it. So you're right, there is a growing number of talent intelligence professionals in some organizations, big organizations like Philips, Amazon, Microsoft are famous for having sort of been some of the forerunners of this, that they have.
Philips was the one I first saw years ago.
Yes.
So that rings true.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have their own departments. Sometimes it sits in HR, sometimes it sits as its own separate division. I think we've been working as a group across the globe, talent intelligence professionals coming together and starting to try and formulate some consistency around the definition of talent intelligence. There's been different extremes over the years. For some, it's the market mapping and headhunting, trying to find things out, where people work, what salaries are on, how can we hire them for this business.
So it's sort of labour market information, insight, intelligence.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there's labour market data, people's salaries, geographies, HR analytics as well, which is the stuff perhaps people are more familiar with, looking at your time to hire and things in the system from the data from your ATS. But then there's like customer data, candidate data, audits as well, which we offer, where we'll go in and audit people's services. So we've been working on a definition, and there's one that's been published and banded around. I've shortened it for today's call because it's quite long. It's better if you read it. So to say it out loud, it's the augmentation of internal and external people data, experience, and technology to drive business decisions. And it's that last bit that's probably a little bit more unique about talent intelligence compared to the traditions of typical resourcing reports, because they're very tactical. They're for the people involved in resourcing. Some of the data that's being produced by talent intelligence is looking 5 years ahead and predicting demographic change, economic change, and how a major company, or even some small companies, may need to adapt their business. That might be moving from one country or one city to another with your operation. That's going to have an impact on recruitment. Rather than get the classic phone call the day before, and by the way, you need 500 people recruiting in our new contact center on the Isle of Skye. Oh dear. It's working further ahead to influence those decisions. They might not even then put the call center on the Isle of Skye, because your data might say you're barking up the wrong tree with regards to resource.
So using data to inform a strategic plan.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
We have a question already, if we could just jump in quite quickly. So, we're talking about data, we're talking about the importance of reporting, forecasting, all those kinds of things. I've got a question from John here. What are the main software platforms currently used within talent intelligence or reporting?
Yeah, it's a great question, John. And interestingly, this is one of the most common questions that comes on there is some talent intelligence groups online, most notably Talent Intelligence Collective, which Toby Culshaw, who's a bit of a leader, an unofficial leader of the TI community online. So this comes up a lot from people. There is no software out there that does TI. There is no one single platform.
Yeah.
So actually, what you'll find is, and a lot of our time is spent finding data from all over the place. So as we've touched on, that can be massive amounts of data from the ONS. So looking at the statistics that the ONS produce. It might be going online and finding surveys done by big companies. So for instance, every year, Michael Page, Randstad, those types of recruitment agencies, they produce data around salaries or market trends. We do the same as well. It's blending a lot of that type of information, plus your internal information. And you might be using Excel. Obviously, you're getting data from Google Analytics as well, from your ATS. Obviously, Jobtrain, we have tools that allow you to build reports and extract data, but you then need to blend them all together. So you'll use different things, like I say, like Excel, maybe some other number crunching software, but there is no one go-to place for talent intelligence information.
So I guess that can make it quite a challenge.
It's very time consuming.
Yeah.
You've got to have an inquisitive mind, I think, is one aspect. And you've got to blend the information together and try and read into it and decipher. There is sometimes a situation where you could go through huge amounts of data and then find actually there's no conclusion that can be drawn, which can be frustrating. That tends to be more of the external data. If it's internal data, classic annoyance maybe where one item's taken its own. And I remember years ago, a big recruitment agency were guaranteeing that if you tapped into their RPO service, they would guarantee a 4-to-1 application to hire ratio, actually a 4-to-1 application to hire ratio. Well, for me, without other data in context, I can't decide whether that's good or bad, because 4-to-1 might just mean that they're putting everyone through the process, regardless of how poorly or how well they match the job description. It could be reflective of a very, very well-refined selection process where they've got it so nailed on the criteria that, yes, they can get it to 4-to-1. So you need other points of information to almost triangulate a variety of pieces of information and draw a conclusion from that.
Yeah. John, what I'd say, or a question for Gary, there are some quite well-known sort of, sources of data and insight, things like ONS. I think Adsuna also run quite a number of reports as well because of the fact that they support the Find a Job platform, which is the job centres national, so they have access to an awful lot of information. So maybe we could send out some links post this session that might be useful in terms of data gathering.
Oh, certainly, yeah. And if everyone looks out for coming soon, there'll be a guide to setting up your own talent intelligence and data focus within your organisation. So we'll cover some of that ground in there as well. So yeah, it's all about common sources rather than one go-to software platform.
Brilliant. So we've skirted round a couple of areas here already, Gary. We're looking at informing us about our strategies using data, whether that's labour market information, salary information, whatever else it might be. And also looking a little bit more operationally. You talked about the 4-to-1 hire ratio. Well, how do we get confidence that that's what we need? But how is TI a value to recruitment and talent acquisition today?
Yeah,
how can it best be harnessed?
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to a point earlier about how there's been this collection of people and trying to work on one definition. The reason being is the data can be used in different ways to benefit organizations in different ways. So some of the common uses would be, and very traditionally, for those who've been in the market a long time, right, remember doing this with a copy of the Yellow Pages, a telephone and a pad of paper. But headhunting is a classic one that benefits from this type of information because you can map the market particularly if you're in very competitive markets. I remember working in the sports industry for New Balance, and we just wanted to poach people from Adidas or Nike, and there was a constant round robin. So you'd be finding out who's there, what are they on, what are they doing, and trying to then build your own little yellow pages, little black book of contacts, and then try and tap them up to come to your organisation. So headhunting's a classic beneficiary of this type of information. But I think where it's really grown in sophistication is influencing the strategy of businesses, as we mentioned earlier, around their decisions for where they might expand into certain markets, maybe launching new products. Can they support that with the right people to make that product work and to make it grow? The geographies that come into that and the territories, manpower planning as well. So I think one of the things that still strikes me and my other sort of peers in the TI industry is companies are still quite short term, and I think our conclusion on that is often down to companies being beholden to shareholders, and the people leading businesses have to deliver a dividend to the shareholders, which can sometimes focus them on the short term and getting that dividend in. But looking long term, starting to plan ahead for the business and for the manpower plans as well will really help benefit recruitment. So using the information to raise the profile of HR and resourcing TA in the company to have more influence, so they're not just on the receiving end of some unsurmountable request, is a growing requirement of TI, and a reason why a lot of TI functions get set up nowadays. And then more going down the micro scale, process engineering and sort of performance optimization, as I talked about earlier. So, in practice, it might be looking at a single point of weakness within your overall recruitment process. It could be an opportunity that's spotted within the process that could have real tangible benefits. So we might, working with some of our clients, looking at the data for their processes, for their activities, it might be identifying a slow period within, let's say, the time between offer and hire. That's the most expensive time to lose people. So we might then look at that slow down and getting people through that stage of the process, and find that also there is a higher dropout rate and probably a relationship, which we try and then draw that conclusion that there is a correlation and causation.
See, classic bottleneck or something similar like that. We actually drill down to understand the detail and how can we remedy that?
Yeah, and that can sound like negative, like you're trying to scrutinize recruitment negatively, but it's really helping them to improve and to succeed. Sometimes it is those opportunities though, as well as weaknesses. So, for instance, we've done a lot of research on the benefits of the use of, say, videos in adverts. So placing video content into your job advert. And the ideal video content would be employees, giving the employees' perspective of your business, not the classic corporate brainwashing or corporate advertorial that sometimes happens. Now, we found that where that's used, you get a 30% higher application rate. But what I particularly like is when you look at the rejection rate. So if you're not using videos in your adverts, we see, like, say, a 60% rejection rate at application, whereas when videos are used in adverts, it's only 20%.
Wow.
So you're actually really improving the quality, because people are probably either deselecting themselves as not suitable, or importantly, those more passive or ambivalent job seekers who perhaps maybe think, I'm not sure if I'm going to bother, could be really compelled for the right reasons from what they see in the videos as well. So that can be really useful. And then you're into really things like classic targets around things like time, cost, quality of service to the candidate as much as the line manager. But they can be also married to the business goals, and I think this is where TI is having this great effect. Is really making the business understand the value from the synergy of working better with recruitment and HR. So you take a reduced time to hire. You're going to see then a better first-time vacancy fill, ideally, because you're not having to go out again for more advertising. You're going to reduce the empty vacancies, the empty chairs, as some companies call it, within the business.
Often overlooked, the cost to a business of not having people in post.
Spot on, Giles. That's it. It's that cost of not having the people in the post. You know, it might be if it's a sales post, you're not getting any sales in, you're not making the revenue, you're not going to make the profit. So that empty chair, that empty sales vacancy is really damaging. That cost is often not seen. It's a bit like the iceberg effect. You're seeing just the cost of recruitment above the waterline, but actually what's the cost of not having someone in the role? So marrying these recruitment targets and measures with the business impact is really compelling.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think we perennially have this conversation about, sometimes recruitment and TA is seen almost as a cost center within a business, rather than a strategic business unit in itself that contributes to obviously the growth of the business through bringing the right people into the organization that stay settled and perform really, really well. And I guess the conversation, what you're saying around TI, actually shines a light on a lot of the invaluable data that is collected by recruitment and TA teams, and also the potential they then have to shape that data and present it in such a way that then suddenly the resourcing team is seen as a strategic partner rather than a cost center. So the data is telling us this in terms of the market or in terms of the process and so on and so forth. Would that be right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, there was some, variety of surveys during the last couple of years, notably those that come out on LinkedIn. What's the most important things to HR directors? What's the most important things to business leaders as well? So like sort of CEOs, that sort of level. Diversity came out as a massive priority, and we've certainly seen that with the amount of inquiries we get around diversity data and advice around that part of the world of recruitment. And the classic thing is, let's tackle diversity straight away. Let's go to advertising and just change the look of our adverts and maybe put some more diverse people in the photographs. But it's so superficial. And where TI can really help is getting into the detail and blending some of that external information with what's going on in your process. So instead of just worrying about how you might look, actually put some substance behind it as a business, because people will see through it otherwise. And so, as an example, we've worked with an organization around their diverse makeup of candidates, and we've looked at data from the ATS that focuses on the postcode of candidates, and we've mapped postcodes of candidates against the demographic data for postcodes, so we can start to see the true reflection of how diverse is the candidate pipeline, but then also how could the advertising placement, is it the method of advertising, is it the placement of advertising? There'll be some people in certain demographics who perhaps don't see certain publications. So in practical terms, if you're always going to go, and I'm using a very extreme example here, but if you're always going to go and put an advert in the Times, guess what? You probably, no matter what photograph or what nice statement you put in your advert, you're not going to see a change in your pipeline because you need to start to think about where those people might exist and to think more cleverly about your tactics behind the strategy.
From I'm going to have sort of two questions this. From a more practical level, for those that are joining this session, they may have access to quite a lot of data. It might be held within the applicant tracking system or some other kind of system. Where do people start in terms of trying to surface some of this data and using their reporting tools more effectively? And I know that that's going to vary a lot from, let's say, one system to another and its own effectiveness in terms of what data and analytics tools does it have, but where and how can people get started? And my second question is actually around the data that our own business, because obviously we both work within Jobtrain. What data do we sit on? How do we surface that? And what kind of stories is that telling, or how do we present it? Absolutely.
I mean, the first thing I'd say is start with what's right in front of you, which is your ATS. Start to mine the data out of your ATS. And people might say, I find reporting boring, or it's not really my cup of tea to think around.
I'm guilty of that myself. I'm getting a lot better, but data's never been a strong point for me.
Yeah, I think when we weave it into a story, it's much more compelling. But to get to that point is the hard thing. So you might not even have people in your team who want to take on that role, or it might not be that playing to their skills. So we've seen a growth in organizations recruiting people with maybe perhaps a data background. I think for me personally, it's not just about being great at data. Yeah, some Excel skills will be good, but some understanding of statistics is handy. Anyone's done their occupational psychology level A, you'll remember maybe standard deviation. It comes into play on big data. But for starting off, just looking at your own internal ATS data, and a little bit of an ability on Excel, but an inquisitive mind goes a long way. And the ability to think around the process and to start to think about how some of those factors influence each other is probably more important. So there's a lot in there. You're going to look at your classic things around like your timescales and your application ratios. Advert source is always top of people's agenda because you want to see how they're spending the money and how certain things are performing. Looking across the business about some of your bottlenecks in processes. But if we was to summarize it, our approach is this: we try and simplify it for people on the three E's, because it's easy to remember. Then the three E's: engagement, efficiency, and EDI, and that's a good starting point before you go and try and tackle the world and get all this external research and data that we do actually consume and digest and turn into some of these insights and guidance. Just start off with that and start to get a sense of where you're at now. So it's giving you a benchmark and a landscape to be able to understand where to go to next. So in fact, I can bring up a slide on screen that will hopefully show this if I can master the sharing of PowerPoint on my on my screen. So let's just give that a whirl. So Giles, are you seeing this slide?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody else should be as well.
Yeah. So some Jobtrain clients might recognise this because some of them will be getting some of this information from us. And
what is this that we're looking at right now, Gary?
Well, this is just looking at efficiency. So it's very simplistic, but designed to be just an eye opener. It's not designed to try and tackle the world and give you every answer, but to give a flavour of what efficiency might look like. We're looking at things like the time in each of the key time scales within your process. So how long it is to get adverts live, the things under your control. How long it takes you to get the people invited to interviews, how long to get the offers out, how long to get people processed from offer, onboarded, pre-employment checked, and into the business on their first day. How long does that take? The overall time to hire, the throughputs as well, so you can understand, are we too loose on our selection criteria or too tight? Are we getting enough people in at the top end from the adverts as a result? And working constantly on addressing that balance. And turning it off and on a bit like a tap. Engagement covers everything around interaction with your candidates. That might be the adverts. It might be how they interact with your technology. It might be how you engage them and keep them engaged through the process. Things like the conversion of people at offer. If you're losing a high amount, it's the most expensive time to lose and the biggest impact on your business and recruitment because you have to go back to day one. Any patterns that can be understood around the way people apply when they apply. Some sectors will see a huge amount of people apply on mobile. Other sectors, take education particularly as an example. Now it's pretty much all desktop, and that might influence some of your thoughts around the selection processes or indeed the adverts. For instance, people who apply on mobile are 3 times more likely to prefer a video interview than people who don't. So, if you've got
that's fascinating.
Desktop, yeah. So a desktop-heavy bunch of candidates, and you're going to plan to do video interviews. You might need to G them up or tee them up with a little bit more support to understand and engage with that process. But that's what engagement can start to give you an idea of, and then.
I noticed a little Indeed stat on there before, Gary. It's actually said, well, we've got 9% of our applications coming from Indeed, but 91% are untracked. Yeah. And it might be quite a scary gap there, but I guess that then focuses your attention on actually we need to get better at tracking our source.
Exactly,
so although there's a kind of almost like there's a whole dearth of data there that you might want, it just kind of highlights where some of the gaps are that can be filled.
Certainly, and this is I should have pointed out, this isn't someone's data. This is just an example that we mocked up. But yeah, that's the kind of insight and lesson that can.
But these are the kind of reports that we produce for our own clients here at Jobtrain using your team.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're not saying that this is what everyone has to do, but this is our approach to doing it feedback's positive because it's simple enough to read and understand, but it's also strong enough to give people a direction as to what to start to focus on. And EDI, the way we show the EDI data, I've seen a lot of data in the past where they'll just say, right, this is how many people of, let's say, male, and this how many female that came through a funnel. But sometimes that split it's indicative of the demographic. What we're more interested in trying to tell companies is what's the difference in the actual throughput from the key stages. Yeah. So if you're recruiting in let's say Shetland Islands, you're going to get a very narrow cross section of society. You're going to get
you'd expect that probably.
If we're looking at ethnicity, it's going to be predominantly white. So your data, if you just track it, how many, which is what I've seen a lot in the past, how many people and a percentage, it's going to say 99% white, let's assume. Oh, that's terrible, it's not very diverse, but it's indicative of the demographic in that area. So if we look instead more at the throughputs, what we can start to see is there any bias potentially going on in the processes? So the way we present that data is to say, well, look, this is of the pot of people that applied from a certain ethnicity or a certain sex or whatever it might be, gender, this is how they then got through the process. So those percentages about percentage it got through to that next stage or got through to the offer stage. So you can then see, is it actually balanced or are we biased in a particular way? We've also started to marry a lot of the data around things like location as well, and flexible working. We did a candidate survey which formed a lot of the information in our market report that went out earlier this year. And people haven't seen that, we'll make sure you get a link to a copy. But the Great Resignation that was talked about, some of the things that we found out link then in practical terms to some of this data. So as an example, we surveyed 7,000 candidates. Only about 25% were actually looking for a job because they had a need to, because maybe they'd been made redundant. Let's say. The other 75% were doing it from choice, and over half were doing so for flexible working. And that's a big influence. But it's also then joining the dots, as we've talked about earlier, triangulating this information that actually there's been statistics done on the empowerment of people with disabilities or people with dependents that they've got to care for, that flexible working has really empowered them to take on more work or better jobs as well. And so going back to that point earlier about diversity, how it's not just changing the advert, it's bringing all those little factors together, and just changing your advertised contractual hours maybe from full-time to part-time can have a big influence. And there was a company, there's a volume recruiter, they were recruiting what was it now? It was a volume role, let's just keep it that. It was a volume role.
Yeah.
Specifics of the role. But they were going out full-time to market. And recently, as everyone's known, the market's become very challenging getting candidates because there's more jobs than there is more jobs than there is candidates. But they went out full-time and they went out for a good number of attempts, just getting almost zero candidates. They changed the hours to part-time. They did some work with the business, looked at how they could alter the shift patterns to offer part-time working. They put the advert back out, and within, I think, 24, 40 hours, they had 100 applications.
Wow. Yeah. That's really impactful. I think pretty much all of us are stressing right now about where have our candidates gone, and that is a challenge at the moment. Just I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. We've got a question from John. Which roles are most in demand right now, and which are least from what you're seeing in some of the labour market information and stuff, and actually across all of our own Jobtrain clients as well? So
which most of the demand?
What roles are most in demand and least?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I mean, actually, there's if anyone attended IHR event last week, Broadbean produced some statistics that were very fresh on this. We've got our own data in the market, the report we did, which is quite copious. But the ones that stuck out, understandably, was the healthcare sector. Now that will be no doubt influenced by COVID and the pandemic. It was also a big recruiter beforehand as well, due to the sheer scale of it. But they by far
social
and
care
away
being a huge challenge. Yeah.
So healthcare, and then as you mentioned, Giles, quite rightly, social care are the biggest ones. What was interesting and possibly bucked the trend of what the government or the press was saying, this fear and doom mongering around redundancies and other things during the tail end of the pandemic and the lockdowns. But leisure and hospitality was next.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest recruiters, leisure and hospitality, they've been really, really struggling. So, when you look at things like the volume of adverts, the volumes of jobs being advertised, those are the three main ones.
Okay, brilliant. That's probably a nice little segue actually into the next session that I wanted to cover off with you is around trends and insights. So what are you seeing at the moment? And if I can ask you like a bit of crystal ball gazing here, what are you expecting to see next? And also what can we do about it? Whether that to be quite specific around recruitment or general market trends, or also trends within talent intelligence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just one of the last slides might just frame where we are now, where we've just got to, and how that might influence the next stage. So hopefully, again, you're seeing my screen. So this is just a summary of some of the things we released in our market reports. That was looking at data from the tail end of last year, and we released this in January, and we're going to be releasing another one 6 months on in July. So let's just frame that. So too many vacancies for number of candidates, a huge rise in the number of vacancies being created. Everyone was clamoring to backfill this roundabout of attrition, this revolving door process of attrition that was going on. People looking to switch all the time, so really keen to look at applying, so huge amounts of applications as well. So companies seeing longer time to hire, as having to re-advertise more than they would usually to keep that's running longer, fighting harder for candidates, needing to talent pool more. So that's been the focus. I think the question TI professionals and the TI community have been asking themselves is, hopefully that slide's disappeared now.
It has. We can see it.
When's that going to dissipate? When's it going to change? So I was involved in a webinar yesterday where we were discussing macroeconomic trends. And so we're looking a lot now at the economic data, things like The Economist, some of the stuff coming out of governments, ONS across the world. And rising inflation is being talked about, the rising cost of living. So when we do our next market report, we're going to be looking at around about 20,000 people in our survey sample. And what we're going to be interested in looking at is, has there been a shift from that preference where people said, we're going to move because we're interested in flexible working? We're really questioning our lifestyle choices. We're not going to put work on the pedestal or the number one priority that we used to. Will that shift as people suddenly find, cost of living is pressing me to put salary as my number one driver in the next job choice? So where that has been kind of downgraded and the focus has been on flexibility, will that suddenly become the top driver again? Also, as well, with the rising cost of inflation, how will that impact businesses? There's talk of, will we get a recession? I don't know. It's debatable. So many industries, as one industry is doing really well, another one might be suffering. So it's kind of balancing out at the moment. But will that cause companies to do any downsizing, which obviously means layoffs, and therefore will we suddenly see the balance addressed of rather than being more jobs and candidates, it's more candidates and jobs again, and again that would completely change for recruiters. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at the moment for the second half of the year, and we're kind of saying probably won't start to impact recruiters until around maybe November, December time. That's what we're thinking. And then generally, if you take some of that demographic information, we recently wrote an article about Gen Z. So the marketplace now, as you're seeing the people coming into the marketplace, the age group is Generation Z. So understanding the characteristics of them, how they work. So they don't want one single full-time job. They want to do a main job, and they also want to have maybe a side job or a side activity that maybe gives them some remuneration, or maybe just, satisfaction. So they want flexible working, but they're not wedded as maybe some of us older ones who really like the practicality of being at home. They're less interested in that because they want to be able to climb the ladder, make network, make contact, have a social aspect as well. So they really want to focus on the flexibility of being able to dip into both as they see fit. So perhaps more working on the move would be of interest. So that has impacts around the advertising, how you engage them, how you even deliver the selection process itself might need to be different, not inviting them back and forth for classic interviews and classic selection processes. And then when they get in the job, how you onboard them. So thinking about an electronic online onboarding experience, a very slick onboarding for pre-employment checks, being able to engage over video with people from the organization, because that's typically how they engage with their friends, their peers, and thinking about when they're in the business, then differences in the way managers manage them, more matrix management, more remote management, and more hub style coming together for specific activities. So that's just one flavor, but that's a real factor now in I think talent intelligence trying to influence organizations to not stick to the Alan Sugar with his statements recently harking back to the 1970s.
Yeah, for sure.
Computers came from. So it's got to be time for change.
Brill. Conscious of time, but Gary, I mean, your team is producing quite a lot of data and reports at the moment, and those reports are available to everybody, not just our own sort of Jobtrain customer base or community. So where and how can those people get access to that kind of data, and also what reports are you producing at the moment? Because you've made reference to a couple of reports at the moment, and I know that you've got a newsletter and that kind of thing, which helps to provide even more insight.
Yeah, absolutely. So we produce so every 6 months we do a market report, which just covers everything that's going on. We put the data into sectors as well. So if you work in a certain sector, you can find all the data covering the 3 E's. That's the engagement, efficiency, EDI for your sector, but you'll find it for every other sector, so you can benchmark yourself against those other sectors. So that's I think January and July in your diaries for those types of reports. Between that, we've just done one on salary. So we've just released it in the last week. So we've analysed salary for around 10,000 vacancies in the last few months, just to give you an understanding by different levels of job, by different job families, different sectors and industries, what the salaries are looking like. So again, you can benchmark that against your own. Now, where are they? You can go to the Jobtrain website. You'll find a talent intelligence section, and you can download those reports free of charge.
I might ask Alex just to share that. Oh, we may have done it already. Just to provide you with a couple of links. There's a link to Gary's LinkedIn profile on here as well, so do feel free to connect with him.
Absolutely. If you follow Jobtrain on LinkedIn, or you follow myself, you'll see us blogging regularly and doing some shortened articles. Sometimes they might lead to long guides, like your own very excellent guide, Giles, on how to buy an ATS. So which is very popular. So we've got some other guides that those things might link to, give a bit more practical detail of how to then go and execute some of the recommendations we're making from these insights. And then if people want to get a little bit of the external data, but they perhaps don't have the time or the resources to do that and to get that external data married with their internal data, we can help with that as well. So we have a monthly newsletter. This is nothing to do with Jobtrain. So this is purely anything that we're finding interesting in our talent intelligence activities from the outside world. We create a monthly digest, a monthly newsletter. You'll have 5 or 6 key articles that just might provide you with some mental nourishment at the very least, but also some practical insights and ideas. And we call that TIC-TAC. And it's TIC-TAC because it stands for Talent Intelligence Communication for the talent acquisition community. And like those little mints, it's small.
Try saying that after you've had a drink. I love it though. It's really good.
So that's TIC-TAC. So that's our monthly newsletter digest. So again, you can get in touch, sign up for that. Again, I'm sure Alex will send out some links to everyone to help them do that. And again, no obligation, just allow that to come into your inbox once a month.
That's superb. Gary, it's been a really popular session. On the face of things, talent intelligence can seem pretty daunting in terms of where do we get started. I hope for everybody that has joined us this morning on this session have got some value from it. I've certainly learned a great deal, and actually, far from it being something that's was quite intangible and difficult to get to grips with, quite the opposite. Actually, there's some very basic fundamental areas where you can get started, and certainly your team are able to send out quite a lot of information to get people tuned into the whole idea of talent intelligence and where practically they can start to benefit from it as well. So Gary, really appreciate all your time, all your insight this morning. I hope everybody's had benefit from it. This whole session will be available afterwards to watch back for those of us that didn't join or anybody that we think would benefit from it. We run these sessions, or are now going to be running these sessions pretty much every other week. So do please come back, join us again, share with friends and colleagues. I think the next session we've got is going to be, just bear with me, on the 8th into June because of the bank holiday. So it's going to be on the 15th of June, and that's going to be with talent.com and Andrea Garvey. Should be a really interesting session. They've got access to an awful lot of data, but they've also got a lot of practical tips because they know that we're already struggling at the moment to attract, engage, and get converted applications in, and obviously hires. And talent.com can certainly help with some tips and guides around that. So really looking forward to that session. Thank you so much for your time this morning, for joining me and Gary. Hope you have a brilliant rest of the week, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.